Welcome to the Orgasm Hour Live. I'm Dr. Suzanne Mulvehill. I'm here with you today from the Female Orgasm Research Institute and the Female Orgasm Training Institute to talk with you about, during episode 6, how to take the pressure off orgasm for you and your partner. We are going to dive into some research, first looking into the two types of pressure. The first pressure we're going to look at is internal pressure, the pressure that the person, in our case, the woman, feels the pressure to have an orgasm. And then we're going to take a look at the partner pressure, what it looks like for how the partners put pressure on their partner. And we'll look at some research that also includes same-sex relationships, same sex with men, same sex with women, heterosexual relationships, and some comments that women and men have made in one of the research papers that was analyzed that showed what the pressure actually sounded like how they expressed this pressure. So that is going to be the first half of the show. And then we're going to go into what works. Like, how do we get into the flow state? What is a flow state? What do women need to orgasm that's different than what men need? So we're going to take a look at all that. And that's really what we bring you in the Orgasm Hour. What I like to bring you is the research from last decades of research. Last week, we looked at hypnotic induction, and we looked at research going back to 1951 on research that showed hypnotic induction as a treatment for women who experienced orgasm difficulty. Back then in 1951, it was called frigidity. But the point I want to make is we look at thousands of researchers like in our show, and we bring the research to the public so that it's the science that you can actually feel and work with and know that what you're experiencing, you're not experiencing alone or alone in your bedroom. This is in the science. So let's take a look first at our first article of what is causing the orgasm difficulty during partnered sex, for example. Let's take a look at that. So the first piece of research we're going to look at is a research paper by, you can see it here. It's in the Journal of Sexual Medicine. It was published, I'd have to go down to the bottom to see when it was published, but I'm guesstimating it was published in the last, in the recent future. I'll go take a look real quick. Let's just look at the bottom, see when was this paper published. It usually states it right. Oh my goodness. I'm trying to get to the bottom so you can see when was this paper published. 2017 in the Journal of Sexual Medicine. Okay, so for those of you that listen via podcast, we're now streaming through 10 different podcast platforms, and you can listen to our shows. The first 4 have been uploaded. And okay, so Journal of Sexual Medicine, cognitive affective dimensions of female orgasm, the role of automatic thoughts and affect during sexual activity. So you might say, what are automatic thoughts? Well, am I going to come this time? Am I taking too long? Those are the kind of thoughts that pop in that become automated because the orgasm problem begins to live within the person, right? So we're talking first about the internal, what's going on inside the woman during partnered sex and what's going on in her head, in her thinking. Okay, so first, here we go. Cognitive affective dimensions of female orgasm. This particular study, the background, cognitive affective factors contribute to female sexual dysfunctions, defined as clinically significant difficulties in the ability to respond sexually or to experience sexual pleasure. Automatic thoughts and affect presented during sexual activity are acknowledged as maintenance factors for these difficulties. So these thoughts are actually maintaining the problem. If there are consistent thoughts that are going on, in one of the papers we're going to talk about how they talk about failure thoughts. They're called failure thoughts. that maintain the problem with orgasm. However, it says there's a lack of studies on the influence of these cognitive affective dimensions regarding female orgasm. So the aim of this study was to assess the role of automatic thoughts and acts during sexual activity in predicting female orgasm occurrence and to investigate the mediator of these variables in the relation between sexual activity and orgasm occurrence, meaning how often do the thoughts show up and how often is the problem showing up with the thoughts. And then it says here there was 926 sexually active heterosexual premenopausal women who reported on their frequency of sexual activities and frequency of orgasm occurrence, the cognitive factors, and the social desirability. It goes on to talk about the types of questionnaires that they completed. And then we're going to talk about what the outcome and the results of this study were. The main outcome measurement was orgasm frequency as predicted and mediated by automatic thoughts and affect experienced during sexual activities. What does this mean? Let's look at the results. The presence of failure thoughts, here it is, failure thoughts, and lack of erotic thoughts during sexual activity significantly and negatively predicted female orgasm. Whereas positive affect experienced during sexual activity significantly and positively predicted female orgasm. So they're basically saying the negative thoughts are going to predict not having orgasm, where the positive thoughts are going to predict having orgasm. Moreover, negative automatic thoughts and positive affect during sexual activity were found to mediate the relationship between sexual activity and female orgasm occurrence. So that's exactly what I just said. The negative thoughts and the positive thoughts were kind of the mediators of, if there's all negative thinking, no orgasm. Positive thinking, orgasm. Positive thinking includes erotic thoughts, no worrying, no am I going to orgasm thoughts, no thinking, just, oh, this feels good. Yeah, this feels really good. Like, hang out there. Oh, yeah. Oh, that feels good. Like, that's where orgasm is going to happen. Oh, this feels good. Lean back, baby. Like, have orgasm become a consequence of the feeling versus striving for the goal of orgasm. I'm going to say that again. Have orgasm become a consequence of the feeling and the flow and the experience that you're having. And orgasm will happen on its own. You don't have to control it. You don't have to moderate it. You don't have to spectator and watch it. Hopefully, I had a buzzing noise just come in. I see somebody's here. Thank you for showing up. My last show lasted like 15 seconds because of an internet problem, so I'm re-recording live. So anyway, so this study, the clinical implications of, bottom line, the failure thoughts and lack of erotic thoughts during sexual activity significantly and negatively predicted female orgasm. That's what we need to know. And the opposite happened with the positive thoughts. The positive thoughts and hanging out in the good feelings are what also contributed to orgasm happening as a consequence of the good feelings. I mean, that's the key. So let's go on to the next study. I'm going to move over to, you're going to continue to see this cognitive affective factors. Let me go over here. This particular study was done by, it's called Cognitive Affective Factors in Female Orgasm. This one was comparing women with and without orgasm difficulty, which is different than what we just saw, where they were just looking at the negative and positive thinking. So this one looked at women with and without orgasm difficulty. It was done out of Portugal, the University of Porto, and let's see here. She did her declarations. Here's the abstract. This is always it's kind of like an executive summary for business. Like if you were thinking of a business plan, the abstract of a research paper is like the executive summary of a business plan. So orgasmic difficulties are one of the most common sexual complaints among women. Yes, in fact, it's up to 72% of females, premenopausal women who have orgasm difficulty, according to the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. It says here, whereas models of sexual dysfunction propose that cognitive affective factors are involved in the development and maintenance of sexual difficulties, there is a need to examine how these factors are actually associated with orgasmic difficulties specifically. So they analyzed women who reported orgasm difficulty, and the controls were women who didn't have orgasm difficulty. And there were 500 women aged 18 to 72 who completed a web survey focused on cognitive affective factors and sexual health. 250 women reported orgasm difficulties, and 250 age-matched women who reported no sexual difficulties. It's kind of interesting that it was exactly 50-50. The differences, what were the outcomes? Let's just go right to the results here. Here we go. Women with orgasm difficulties scored higher on sexual inhibition than controlled, being inhibited sexually, like, being the way we're taught to be, right? Being the way like a lot of religions teach women to be, like modest. That doesn't work well for orgasm. In fact, I worked with Backyard Church, a guy who writes for Backyard Church for Medium, and gave him all this research on, and he wrote a paper titled "The More Religious You Are, the Worse Your Sex Life Might Be." So sexual inhibition is correlates with orgasm difficulties. And here you can see the results showed women with orgasm difficulties scored higher on sexual inhibition. They also reported more negative automatic thoughts during sexual activity. We just heard that in the last study, the similar negative automatic thoughts concerning failure and disengagement, sexual abuse. Sexual abuse is one of the main, childhood sexual abuse is a significant factor in causing orgasm problems for women. That is well known in the research. Lack of affection from partner, women's passivity, being passive, letting her partner do what he wants to do and checking out. That does not work well. And body image, and they don't have much erotic thoughts. So, having partnered sex when a partner is in their head, this is really a great opportunity, ladies, if you're in your head, to stop, and say, hey, you know what? I need to stop for a minute. Let's just take a deep breath together. Let's take some deep breaths together. Let's look at each other's eyes and like reconnect here. And, maybe just start with some touching or stroking on the arms so you can start feeling sensation, and take so much pressure off your clitoris. Seriously, all the pressure that your orgasm doesn't work with pressure. That's if I were to say one thing in this whole hour, or this whole orgasm hour, orgasm and pressure do not go well together at all. Okay, so what are the clinical implications? Like, what do we try to get out of this as researchers to help women that have orgasm difficulty? Helping women shift their focus from non-erotic negative thoughts to erotic stimuli, as well as addressing the sexual inhibition, can be relevant targets of intervention aimed at women's orgasm difficulties. So, we can stop here for a minute and talk. We've had 2 studies we've looked at now, both of them referring to the internal thought processes that are going on inside of the woman when she's having partnered sex. Could be when she's having solo sex too, but this show is about the pressure. Women, believe me, I mean, we put pressure on ourselves during solo sex too, especially if we have orgasm problems. Like, what's wrong with me? Why can't I orgasm? Why am I broken? I mean, women think they're broken. And I think it's a consequence of the culture we live in, that women are feeling broken from not being able to orgasm. So it's not personal. It's feelings of sexual inadequacy that come through cultural conditioning, because we're inhibiting sexual wellness through the way our culture operates. I mean, I was looking up this week how many millions of dollars are spent per year in the United States on abstinence programs and teaching abstinence, and the lack of teaching teenagers about their sexual bodies. Guess where they're going? They're going to porn. There's 154 million downloads of pornography a day. And so that is what is being used to teach our children, our youngsters, because there's lack of sex education in school, there's abstinence training, and kids are having sex anyway. I mean, that's pretty much what the research has shown. I'll do a show on that one day to show that the abstinence programs are not actually resulting in abstinence. They're having sex. So our government's just spending a lot of our money on abstinence programs. So, okay, so let's go. There's one more study here. I'm not going to go into detail because we've already talked about 2 studies on cognitive distraction. We know that cognitive distraction is a leading cause, and welcome, whoever just signed in, welcome. Cognitive distraction is a leading cause of orgasm difficulty in women. And this one here clearly states cognitive distraction in women's sexual functioning. This is a paper, if you want to read it, it's from the Journal of Sex and Marital Therapy from the year 2000. And it's going into the similar topic that we've already talked about. There's a lot of research about cognitive distraction. What I want to move to now is the partners. So we talked about, this show began with 2 components of putting pressure on orgasm. The first one is by the woman herself, putting her own pressure on herself during solo or partnered sex. And the second component is the partner, who puts pressure on the partner, whether they realize it or not, or whether they realize it or not. And we're going to take a look at some statements in one of these studies, a table of comments that men and women made in same-sex and partnered sex relationships, of different types of comments that were made that were pressuring their partner to orgasm. And they were pressuring women to women, men to men, women to women, men and women. Like, the pressure goes in every direction. It's most often seen, that we're aware of as researchers, it's seen mainly from to the woman, because we know that women, up to 72% of women have orgasm difficulty, according to the way that it's measured by the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. So let's take a look at this particular paper. This paper is, I'm going to share this one with you. This is this one. Okay. This is a very interesting research paper. This paper is from the Journal of Sex Research. It was published in what year? 2017. And it was for the Society of Scientific Study of Sexuality, peer-reviewed research, titled, "Do Women's Orgasm Function as a Masculinity Achievement for Men?" And this is kind of an interesting topic, because I hear women talk about how they feel pressured from their partners, from their male partners, to orgasm. And I mean, not only do they feel pressure, but they're feeling distance from their partners. Like, their partner's sense of self-esteem is affected whether they orgasm or not. And in some cases, women aren't going to orgasm regardless of what the technique the man uses, regardless how much penetration he's doing, or whatever he's doing. If the woman is in her cognitive thinking, we just saw that in the previous research, what's going on in her mind, she's not going to orgasm. So it's good communication. And we're going to talk the last part of the show about what partners can do to facilitate. Now we're going to talk about what helps cause the problem in the pressure. So this particular study, let's take a look at what the abstract said. Orgasms have been promoted as symbols of sexual fulfillment for women and have perhaps become a symbol of a woman's healthy sex life. However, some research has suggested that this focus on women's orgasms, though ostensibly for women, may actually serve men, but the mechanisms of this are unclear. In the present experiment, we hypothesize that women's orgasms specifically function as a masculinity achievement for men. To test this, we randomly assigned 810 men with the average age of 25 to read a vignette where they imagined that an attractive woman either did or did not orgasm during a sexual encounter with them. Participants then rated their sexual self-esteem, their sexual esteem, and the extent to which they would feel masculine after experiencing the given situation. Our research showed that men felt more masculine and reported higher sexual self-esteem when they imagined that a woman orgasmed during sexual encounters with them. Well, to me, that feels kind of obvious. Like, I would think would be natural. And that this effect was exacerbated. This is the part that's important. This effect was exacerbated for men with high masculine gender role stress. What is high masculine gender role sex? I would love for men to comment about that. What is high masculine gender role stress? Is that patriarchy? I've never heard that term before, high masculine gender role stress, meaning that they're stressed in their role of masculinity. That's how I understand it. So it does say that these results suggest that women's orgasm do function, at least in part, as a masculinity achievement for men. So if a man who has a high masculinity gender role is with a woman who has orgasm difficulty, what this research is saying is there's a chance he's going to put pressure on her to orgasm because he needs it for his sense of self-esteem. And what can happen with a woman who has orgasm difficulty and feels this pressure? Two things. One, she's going to fake it and make you think that she orgasmed when she didn't. Two, she may be honest and say, listen, I'm not going to orgasm, and you may become disappointed. So there could be other scenarios. I'm just giving you two possible scenarios. And I remember reading a Reddit post one time when I was doing my dissertation research, and a woman said that she had been faking orgasm with her husband for 27 years. I can't imagine doing that, but it stayed with me. This woman had been faking her orgasms with her husband for 27 years. So know, gentlemen, that if you have this need, this unconscious need, sometimes it's unconscious, you're not even aware that you are putting pressure on her. But if it's like a goal, oh, we're going to bring you to orgasm, we're going to make you come, that's probably going to turn off her ability to orgasm. Orgasm does not like pressure. Orgasm doesn't like it. It likes pleasure. It likes flow. It likes to feel good. It likes to be a consequence. It sometimes even surprises us. I've had orgasms that have completely surprised me. Completely, like, didn't even expect it. So you create room for it, because the flow state, which we're going to talk about in a little while, the flow state allows orgasm to become a consequence, not a goal. So goal orgasm is going to just create a lot more pressure. Okay, so now we know that men who have a high masculinity gender role, they feel a lot of stress or maybe they just feel the need to to give the woman the orgasm, so that they can have the feather in their cap, in a sense. Not so much for her, but for them. She's probably going to fake it, or you're going to be disappointed. Those are the two possibilities, until you realize that you can change the way you approach her orgasm and make it that it's not about you, that it's something that's happening within her. Sure, your skills are important. There's no question about that. I mean, I was with a man. There's men who know how to touch a woman in a certain way for ejaculation to happen. And there are men who say they know and don't know. And there are men who know, and there is a skill. So being skilled is also one of the determinants of female orgasm. So, open up the books, gentlemen, if you are not aware of the female genitalia, or you think that she orgasms through penetration alone, I highly encourage you to learn about how she orgasms. One man had told me, and this actually kind of shocked me. A guy I knew for a long time had said that he had never tried to bring a woman to orgasm. And I thought, are you kidding me? You've never tried? And I mean, and again, the word try. Now, again, I want to look at this I've never tried. I originally interpreted I never tried, meaning he didn't stimulate her clitoris. He was focused on just penetration. Because trying can also be a word that can be looked at as pressure. So if it was coming from a flow state where, if he's giving her oral sex and she's enjoying it, where orgasm becomes a consequence because they're both connected to the experience, versus I'm going to try to make you come. Orgasm isn't going to live there. All right, let's go into the next study. The next study is even a little more, wow. We're going to start at the top, because where we're going to go is to the table. This study is on what's called orgasm coercion. I had never heard of the word orgasm coercion. Overlaps between pressuring someone to orgasm and sexual coercion. So this is a very interesting study published in the Archives of Sexual Behavior in 2022, just a few years ago. Sarah Chadwick is the lead author, and she's done a few papers on orgasm coercion. She talks about, so let's read this abstract. Excuse me. Trying to ensure that a partner orgasms during sex is generally seen as positive, but research has yet to assess how this might involve pressuring partners to orgasm in coercive ways. In the present study, we tested whether pressuring a partner to orgasm is a coercive behavior by assessing how this behavior overlaps with sexual coercion. And they analyzed participants of diverse gender, sex, and sexual identities, 912 people. Average age was 31 years old. And they completed a survey asking them whether they've ever felt pressured by a partner to orgasm, and to describe what partners have said or done to pressure them, and to answer a series of questions about the most recent incidences in which pressure occurred. Mixed quantitative and qualitative results showed that orgasm pressure tactics were analogous to sexual coercion tactics, and that being pressured to orgasm was associated with experiencing sexual coercion, faking orgasms, and negative psychological and relational outcomes, which means breaking up, or getting divorced usually. Or negative psychological, taking it personally, feeling depressed. I mean, we know that sexual problems have a relationship with mental health issues that work both ways, like meaning that they can cause orgasm difficulties and they can be the result of orgasm difficulties, mental health challenges. Anxiety can cause orgasm difficulties, and orgasm difficulties can cause anxiety, for example. So let's go down a little bit further here. Feeling obligated to ensure a partner's orgasm was also arguably creating a scenario with high interpersonal stakes, where absence of a partner's orgasm could reflect one's own inadequate sexual skills. Now, it could reflect inadequate sexual skills, or it could reflect an interpretation of inadequate sexual skills. A partner can have great sexual skills, and still a woman may not orgasm, because we saw earlier she could be in her head having an orgasm problem. If she's in her head, regardless of your skill set, she's probably not going to orgasm. So this is why we're having this conversation, so that we can get these conversations out of the bedroom and actually into a place where they can be discussed, where you can talk about these, not just when you're having sex. Like, I highly encourage these kind of conversations with your partner, with before sex. Make it a dinner table topic or an after dinner table topic. Hey, I want to talk with you about, like, the pressure that I'm feeling when we're having sex. Like, I'm noticing that I'm feeling pressure. I just remembered I had a guy ask me one time, after he gave me oral sex, and he said, "How was I?" I was like, "How were you?" Like, I wasn't doing an evaluation of how were you, but I remember the question, "How was I?" Um, so let's continue here. Let's see. I want to go take you to the table of what actually people said that they felt about orgasm. Here we go. Okay, so this table is a very interesting table. These are actual comments that partners made, and they put in this study that they shared these exact comments, and these are organized by different topics. So you can see continued sexual activity is one of the topic areas. Continued sexual activity. Okay, so let's read this first one, and this is from a bisexual woman who was aged 28 years old. She said, "My ex-partner would not take no, it's not happening today, as a response, and insisted on reciprocation even when it didn't make sense for me." Obviously, she said X, right? This next person was a heterosexual woman, aged 24. "My sexual partner said, 'I won't finish until you have an orgasm.' I've had a partner that felt the need to get even rougher and insert himself more intensely with the belief that I would orgasm that way." So when I talk about the need to have good sexual knowledge, like, she's not going to orgasm most of the time. She's not going to orgasm from penetration alone. And do you know, in the 1980s, they had that listed as a psychological problem for women? And Freud did a terrible disservice to women and to us, to men, to society in general, saying that women needed to become, that clitoral orgasm was actually immature. That's what he said. And this was not even 100 years ago. Clitoral orgasm for women was immature, and that women needed to learn how to get a mature orgasm through penetration alone. And this lingered on in the 1970s with all these studies for these poor women, that now was listed as a psychological problem if they couldn't orgasm through penetration alone. Oh my God, that it's now in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, that it specifically states that many women do not orgasm through penetration alone, and it's not a psychological problem. So we're still working through this penetration alone thing, and this woman's comment saying that he inserted himself more intensely with the belief that I would orgasm that way. Did she end up faking? Maybe. I mean, there's a study out of Iran where a lot of women fake their orgasm in Iran because they just want sex over with. That's a different topic than what we're talking about today. But this faking orgasm and getting it over with, and in this situation with this woman stating that he believed that if he was penetrating her more intensely, she was going to orgasm. No. Okay, so we'll go on to the next one. Emotional manipulation, asking, repetitive asking. Okay, so we talked about how orgasm coercion and sexual coercion are similar. And here's an example of that with comments that men and women made. So this was a bisexual woman, aged 24, and she said, "My partner asked, 'Did you come?' and very clearly and expectedly wanted me to say that I had." In fact, I know a woman who would fake orgasm because the partner was expecting it, and it just that was the reason. So these are coming from honest comments of men and women. This was the bisexual. So here is a heterosexual man, aged 24, and he said, "She asked me to come several times, even though I wasn't so turned on. A bisexual cisgender female, age 37. What's wrong with you that you can't come? I mean, seriously. I mean, we talk about pressure on the orgasm. I mean, talking to partners, what's wrong with you that you can't come? Oh my God, that's hurtful. So yes, this is what this woman heard. If we look at the left side, I'm here, making the partner feel guilty. Here it says, you don't love me and I can't make you come. You must think I'm ugly. This was a heterosexual man, age 36. I guess this is what he heard. You don't love me, or I can't even make you come. I'm not sure if he said this or I guess, no, she said it because I mean, she's saying you must think I'm ugly. And she was expecting him to make her come. Here, she needed some education. It's not his job to know. I mean, sure, it's helpful, but to know the skill set, but it's her job to be not thinking and absorbed in cognitive distraction. And so she was blaming him. And this was a 36-year-old man. Thinking, poor guy, right? I mean, you must think I'm ugly. I can't even make you come. You don't love me. I don't know. Okay, next one. This is interesting. This is a heterosexual woman, age 27. My partner pouted and acted frustrated and saddened by his own inability to make me come. So this is the kind of pressure that, he's feeling responsible now for her orgasm. And now he's pouting and feeling sad. I mean, do you think there's a chance she's going to fake orgasm next time so he doesn't feel that way? Probably. Probably. Unfortunately. Here's another one. This is a bisexual woman, age 33. He stated that what he is sexually excited by is making his partner orgasm, therefore hinging his pleasure on mine, despite the fact that I explicitly stated that I am unlikely to orgasm. So here's another example, right, of pressure and orgasm coercion. This is another one. Okay, this is a 24-year-old straight female, and this was emotional threats about orgasm. My partner, told me I was going to find someone else and that we were never going to work it out because he couldn't make me orgasm. Wow. Wow. And, this man is going to go on to the next person with the same kind of attitude. And she's going to go into her next relationship with this emotional threat in the back of her mind from the last partner. These are how we're hurting each other, and then making orgasm like a crystal ball, making it the goal. It's not the goal. It's the consequence. It's the outcome. When we're so absorbed in a state of absorption, as we're going to talk about that, the state of absorption, that a woman more than a man needs to be in a state of absorption. When I could just lean back, and the partner say, I got you, baby, and just feel the sensations that were going on in my body. And then him saying, you're coming, baby, you're coming. That's how it happened for me. And then I burst into tears. It wasn't by trying. It was by being present and leaning back and feeling safe and feeling held. That's how it's going to happen. Okay, so I'm going to do one more. This one is a queer, pansexual, cisgender woman, age 28. She talks about how she learned to fake it. She said, I learned to fake orgasm because if she did not think that I came, she would be angry. She would sleep on the couch, tell me to get out of the house, go on a long drive without communicating with me, that sort of thing. So, wow. I mean, this is happening in all types of relationships. It's not just heterosexual. This is how another woman acted when her partner couldn't orgasm. So, physical threats. Here, this is a trans female 19, my ex would get angry and beat me if I didn't come before he did. Wow. Lesbian woman, 19. They were very forceful, and it was during an act of sexual assault. They said, I'm doing this until you finish. I know you want this. Yeah, I mean, this is actual sexual coercion. One partner destroyed my personal property as a response to one occurrence in which I did not have an orgasm during sex. I mean, wow. Can you believe that? I mean, about an orgasm because they couldn't orgasm, they destroyed their property? Really? Yes, this is what's happening. Demanding an orgasm. Multiple participants said this. The partner said, I want you to have an orgasm or come for me. Now, I can tell you that just in this last week, I've heard several women share that that puts pressure on them when they hear, I'm gonna help make you come. I'm gonna make you come. We really can't make anyone come. That is something that happens inside an individual's body and mind. We can't really make them come. We can facilitate an environment where orgasm can become possible, but we're not going to make them come. So I think in all these examples, there was a lack of, knowledge about whether there was a knowledge or experience or feeling responsible or feeling bad about not being able to orgasm. So here we'll do this one, demanding an orgasm. He thrust into me very hard and practically yelled into my ear to orgasm. He began rubbing my clitoris very hard and repeating that he wanted me to orgasm. It hurt, and he seemed like he would never give up. So I faked it, the orgasm, to get him to stop. That was a bisexual cisgender woman aged 25 that stated that. Impatience. I had an impatience story myself with my partner, my ex-husband, husband at the time, years ago, saying, did you come yet? I was like, well, that's not going to help me come, is asking me did you come yet? Seriously. So this person, straight man, age 32, my partner pressured me via body language, acting bored or in a hurry or saying things like, are you close? In a clearly frustrated way. She would insist I orgasm regardless of if I tried to end the encounter, which is the reason for there being a kind of pressure. So yeah, it's happening to men and women. And here, this last one, the partner communicated that they wanted to have a child. Multiple participants were pressured because of wanting to have a child. So there's another study here. I'm not going to go into this particular one, but for those of you that might be interested in this topic or listening on podcast after this is recorded, this was in the Archives of Sexual Behavior by the same two researchers. This one was called Orgasm Coercion and Negative Relationship and Psychological Outcomes, the Role of Gender, Sexual Identity, Perpetration Tactics, and Perceptions of the Perpetrator's Intentions. So it's another study. I want to start focusing now on the positive side of what actually works in sexual satisfaction, in partnered sex, in facilitating orgasm. So I'm going to share this one. This particular study is called From the Journal of Sex and Marital Therapy. This was published, I don't know exactly when this one was published, but we can see here in the abstract, we'll go ahead and read the abstract. Sexual satisfaction plays an important role in relationship, mental, and even physical health. Activities that produce a state of flow create meaning in people's lives. Although people who report high levels of sexual satisfaction describe their sex lives as being very meaningful, there is little research on the relationship between sexual satisfaction and flow. This study will address this gap. 100 participants who were in monogamous relationships completed an online survey consisting of 2 questionnaires. the new sexual satisfaction scale, and the core dispositional flow state scale. We used this analysis modeling approach to examine the association. I'll read it. We used partial least square structured equation modeling approach to examine the association between flow and sexual satisfaction. We found that flow was a statistically significant positive predictor of both partnered focus and personal sexual satisfaction. And our results indicated that there was no statistically significant gender differences. So it didn't matter if it was same-sex, male same-sex relationship, female same-sex, heterosexual. This statistically significant experience of sexually satisfied people and flow, that it was statistically significant, meaning flow didn't, the sexual satisfaction, it wasn't random that it happened. It happened as a result of the flow state. So what is a flow state? I'm going to give you an example of my own personal experience of a flow state. So a flow with a partner. This was in a sex practice that I had had with a man about 6 years ago. And sex practice, meaning it was sex practice. This is not a partner. This was a sex practice partner. This was not somebody I was dating. This was not a boyfriend. This was not a partner. It was other than a sex practice partner. So we were going to have a sex practice, and we set the parameters, the conditions. There was no kissing. There wasn't attraction either, because if there's attraction, you can't, it's kind of, at least I found it difficult to have sex practice continue with a partner. There's attraction because there's a desire then for it to become a relationship when there's attraction. And you might think, well, how do you have sex with somebody that you're not attracted to? That's a practice in itself. And you'd be surprised to find how desire can arise on its own. Your own desire can arise because attraction can actually create a block in a relationship because you want to please the partner. But when you're not in a relationship to please the partner, you're there to practice sex and experience what's going on in your own body. A sex practice partner can be great for that. So we both had a little bit of cannabis. We set, like I said, the container, there wasn't going to be no penetration, no kissing. And we would, experience have a sexual experience. And the flow state that I had experienced with him. So I had already orgasmed through, he brought me to orgasm through, what was it? Oh my God, I'm going blank here. It was through ejaculation. It was an orgasm through ejaculation. And so I already had an orgasm, and now it was, quote, his turn. And as I was stroking him, it wasn't working. Like you can't focus just on the making him orgasm either. So I was on top and I was just flowing with him, right? I was stroking him. I was on top and in flow with him. We were just flowing. No touching my clitoris. There was no desire, no asking for orgasm. I felt this heat literally enter my body. It only happened one time in my life. This heat entered my body up through my genitals. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to orgasm. And I went into an orgasmic state and had my orgasm. And I opened my eyes and he had orgasm too. And we both burst out laughing because that was his orgasm that actually had entered my body. And that's an example of a flow state. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen every time because it only happened once for me. And when of course, the brain will be like, oh, we want that to happen again. And you'll try to create the parameters for it to happen again. It doesn't work if you try to make it happen again. You have to access the flow state for it to happen. Be in flow. So that's what we know about this study is the flow state. And here, let's just read this. This is interesting here. Most people believe Most people believe the cultural assumption that the intensity of sex fades when the honeymoon period of the relationship wears off. But the latest research has found that for individuals and couples who possess certain qualities, sexual satisfaction increases with time. Sexual experiences become so good that for some, they might be considered one of life's most peak or optimal experiences. Research into what constitutes optimal experiences often examines what is referred to as flow state. And this flow state, you can see, is a term that was coined back in 1990. And let's just see what the definition, let's look at this, what the definition of flow state actually means. From a research perspective, flow is a state in which people are so involved in an activity that nothing else seems to matter, that the experience is so enjoyable that people will continue to do it, even at a great cost for the sheer sake of doing it. Although flow has been studied for more than 2 decades, to date, we know little about the relationship between sexual activity and flow. This study aims to fill that void. Specifically, we are interested in whether flow might predict higher levels of sexual satisfaction. And we, from the research, that sexual experiences. And you might ask, what does significant mean? What it means is that it wasn't by chance, it wasn't by accident. The flow state actually created this more positive sexual experience. I looked at all those comments people made about being pressured to have an orgasm. When you're in a flow state, the orgasm happens as a consequence of the state. It does not happen by putting pressure on a partner to have it. It does not happen by making the goal to be orgasm. It won't happen that way. So flow state, learning how to access a flow state. Okay, so let's take a look at this other study. I want to show you this because this is similar. This was called in 1994, a research paper by Louis Schwartz, and he talked about absorbed states play different roles in female and male sexual responses. And he tested a hypothesis, right? So he says here, the absorbed state, sexual arousal orgasm pathway, asserts that absorbed states of consciousness accompany sexual arousal, sometimes called altered states of consciousness or sexual trance. This is where the orgasm is going to just happen. I mean, orgasm is defined for women as an altered state of consciousness. If you look at the research, Cindy Meston, a group of researchers in 2003, defined one of the ways that they defined female orgasm is as an altered state of consciousness. Now, we don't just pop into an altered state of consciousness, we transition into an altered state of consciousness. So any kind of goal with orgasm isn't going to facilitate a flow into accessing an altered state of consciousness. And it says here, this is what makes it so interesting for women, right? Absorbed states are an obligatory pathway to high physiological sexual arousal and to orgasm in many, perhaps all females. In the next highlighted section, but the absorbed state pathway is not an obligatory feature of arousal and orgasm in most males. Now, we are working with a dominant sexual response model from Masters and Johnson from 1966. That's the model for which most treatments for orgasm difficulty, most understanding about orgasm function has been made, that basically says desire will lead to arousal and arousal will lead to orgasm. In the male model, where we just read that men do not need to have an absorbed state of consciousness to orgasm. Arousal will result in orgasm, right? But for women, there's an implicit assumption in the dominant sexual response model that women need to transition into an altered state, into an absorbed state of consciousness in order to orgasm. And that is an implicit assumption in the dominant sexual response model that says arousal will result in orgasm. So without knowing this implicit assumption, what we end up knowing is that women are buying a lot of vibrators because they're trying to get aroused so they can have an orgasm. And for some women, it will work. For some women, the stimulation of the clitoris through a vibrator will help a woman access an altered state of consciousness and shift into having an orgasm. But the fact that we have been working with the dominant sexual response model from Masters and Johnson since 1966, that implies that arousal will result in orgasm for men and women, when we know that women need to be in an altered state, even right here. And we know from the research we just saw that a flow state is really where sexual trance and this sexual satisfaction is happening for the couple. That's where the focus needs to shift. And I mean, it's kind of like turning it to Titanic. Like, how do we turn the ship with our culture believing that arousal is going to result in orgasm, especially when we know that women can orgasm through non-genital stimulation? There's plenty of research on that. Barry Komisarek out of Rutgers University, Dr. Nan Weiss. There's plenty of research showing that women can orgasm through their imagination alone. So that's where the work is. More so it's not so much on more stimulation of the clitoris. It's working on clearing out the thinking, so we're not cognitively distracted and we're able to be in an altered state of consciousness and shifted to an altered state. So I'll share with you the results of my own study, because this also defied, in a sense, the how would we say it? This was a study it's called Assessment of the Effect of Cannabis Use Before Partnered Sex on Women with and Without Orgasm Difficulty. It was by myself. This was my dissertation research, and Jordan Tischler, my research partner, who's also the vice president of the Female Orgasm Research Institute. And I want to take you, let's just follow the similar pattern. The background: up to 41% of women face challenges achieving orgasm, a statistic unchanged for 50 years. And the aim of the study was to evaluate the effect of cannabis use before partnered sex on women with and without orgasm difficulty. And the methods, what did we use? This observational study evaluated responses from the Female Sexual Function Index on orgasm, women who could orgasm with or without cannabis. The outcomes of this study, I just made it, there we go. I want to make sure you can see this. We're looking here at the outcomes. The outcomes included orgasm frequency, difficulty, and satisfaction related to cannabis use or lack of use before partnered sex. So it was called a within study design, meaning that it was the same women who said, yes, I have orgasm difficulty, or no, I don't. And they said, here's the results. Here's my results of orgasming when I use cannabis, and here's the results of when I orgasm without cannabis. So of the 1,037 survey responses, 410 were valid and complete. 23 surveys, 5.6% returned, were excluded due to failure to meet the study's criteria. Of the validated surveys, most women, 52%, reported difficulty achieving orgasm during sexual activity with a partner. These women were primarily between 25 and 34 years of age. 75% identified their race as white, and that 52% identified as LGBTQI. And 82% were married or in a relationship. Among participants who experienced challenges in experiencing orgasm, here we are, 72.8% reported that cannabis use before partnered sex increased orgasm frequency. 67% stated that it improved orgasm satisfaction, and 71% indicated that cannabis use made it easier for them to orgasm. The frequency of cannabis use before partnered sex correlated with increased orgasm frequency for women who experienced difficulties achieving orgasm, and it was statistically significant. The reasons for cannabis use for partnered sex resulted in a more positive orgasm response. So now I'm going to stop sharing here for a minute as we wrap this up. We're actually already at 1 hour. What I want to say is safety is the foundation of sexual encounters. So even if cannabis can help women orgasm, even if flow state can help a woman orgasm, the safety has to be there. So you have to feel safe with your partner. Can't be in a pressure, like experimenting with orgasm, trying to shift your thinking so that orgasm can happen organically and naturally, and let it surprise you. Like, let orgasm surprise you. Just quiet your mind, quiet your thinking, move into a relaxed state, and let orgasm find you. I'm Dr. Suzanne Mulvehill. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. You can take a look at all of our podcasts. We're about to launch a 12-week training program called Becoming Orgasmic with Medical Cannabis, with myself and Dr. Janessa Wilson King as the cannabis doctor. And we'll be launching that soon on femaleorgasmtraining.com. You can look at our research at femaleorgasmresearch.org. If you want to get involved in policy on helping get legislation changed on adding women's health conditions, including female orgasm difficulty as a condition of treatment for medical cannabis, you can find us at womenscp.org. And you can find me on multiple social media channels at Dr. Suzanne Mulvehill. Thank you for watching the Orgasm Hour. We'll see you next week.